Good morning and welcome to Jefferson City, the capital, to be more specific, for the 2013 inauguration of Governor Jay Nixon. I am ABC 17's Brian Tate alongside Missourinet Bob Pretty. And Bob, this is certainly a ceremony that is steeped in tradition, although tradition has a tendency to change once in a while over the years, but certainly there's still the pomp and circumstance that we see every 4 years at the Capitol.
In fact, as we're talking right now, Ryan, the inaugural parade is winding its way through Jefferson City and will be winding around and back of the Capitol building. The event has been held outdoors since 1965, except for 1 year when it was moved inside. That was 1997 with Mel Carnahan's second inauguration. Until then, it was all held indoors, except for 1 year, 1917, when this building was not quite done, so they couldn't do it inside as they usually did in the House chamber. So they moved it outside over here to where the highway building is today. But that's the only other time until '65 that it was ever held outdoors. So inaugurations have been held indoors. Inaugurations are joint sessions of the General Assembly. That's the format in which it all happens. And as the ceremony unfolds the next hour and a half to 2 hours behind us, we'll be telling you a little bit more about the people being sworn in and the events that are happening. But this is all tradition. The oaths are given in reverse order of importance, and the governor is sworn in at noon with the church bells in the background, except sometimes it hasn't happened that way.
For the next half an hour, you can join us on Missourinet.com as well as ABC17News.com. And then at 11 o'clock, you can join us over on ABC 17, where we'll have live coverage of today's inauguration. Besides all of the ceremonies that are involved with the inauguration, one of the aspects of today's event that most people will be talking about is the weather. Unofficially, we're about 16, 17 degrees. Thankfully, the wind is not blowing. Cold, but certainly not as cold as we have seen in the past.
And as the skies cleared off a little bit, so we might see a little bit warm weather before it warms up. It's supposed to get up to about 30, perhaps. Maybe we need to check with your weather.
Maybe 30 later on in the afternoon.
Okay.
I'm not banking on 30 by the time they start taking the oaths.
But 16 is not bad compared to some of the things that we've had in the past. Some of us who are real old veterans about this stuff remember the 1977 Joe Teasdale inauguration, which was held after a 1-foot snowfall the night before, and we had canceled the parade because of that. Joe Teasdale decided he wanted to be inaugurated outdoors despite -2 degree readings on the thermometer, because all his friends from Kansas City had come down to see him sworn in. The wind chill was -45 that day, and so we sat out here on these towers that are off to our side, and I've never been so miserable in my life. The National Guard was allowed to send its people out for only about 15 minutes at a time. Some of them had frostbitten ears. The pianist got frostbite on her fingers. This today is just absolute heaven compared to that. You know?
Compared to 1977,
oh my,
yes.
Yeah. So usually the temperatures are in the 20s or low 30s for these events. So it's pretty nice. All you have to do is bundle up, keep your feet warm, keep the core warm, I guess is the phrase that we use these days, and you're in good shape. So we're looking forward to a great event with the governor being sworn in for a second term, and we're looking for the rest of the people to be sworn in for their terms, except for Governor Kinder, Lieutenant Governor Kinder, who will be sworn in for a third term. Only the second time that's ever happened in Missouri history. And of course, there's a lot of question about whether he'll finish that third term because he's running for Congress in southeast Missouri. And then there's a lot of questions about what happens if he does get elected and leaves that office. So there's a lot of things that are actually starting today, and it's not just the governor's second term.
There's a lot of subplots. I mean, every inauguration is historical.
Sure.
But there are a lot of historical subplots to this inauguration. And as you may have noticed, Bob has been to a couple of these. I've lived in the state of Missouri for now more than a decade, and I have never been to an inauguration. So thankfully, I have a tour guide for this event. How many inaugurations is this going to be for you?
12.
This is your 12th?
Yeah.
First one was?
The second Hearns in 1969.
Warren Hearns, and which was, to bring it back to today, his second term was the first when they adjusted the Constitution.
They changed the Constitution, and Warren Hearns was the first governor to be elected to a second consecutive 4-year term. He was not the first governor to be elected to succeed himself. That distinction goes to John Miller back in 1830. But he couldn't succeed himself for a full 4-year term. So John Miller was the man who held the office the longest until Warren Hearns came along, and the Constitution was changed to allow him to serve a second term. So he was sworn in 1969, the son of a potato chip maker from southeast Missouri, from Charleston. And he served for another 4 years before Christopher Bond came in. Bond served 4 years, was defeated by Joe Teasdale, who was then defeated by Christopher Bond, and as things turned out. He got his second term, but not consecutive. So we're working on all of that to be put together now as part of the history of the inauguration.
And this will be the first time that a governor has taken the second oath of office for governor since 1997, when another Southeast Missourian, Mel Carnahan, took the oath.
Well, actually, Mel took, yes, that's right. Mel took the second term, second oath of office in '97. He didn't finish that term,
right,
of course, because of the tragic plane crash. But he's the last one to take a second oath of office in a row. The last one to finish 2 terms was John Ashcroft. And that was before
and considering in national politics, I mean, the last 3 presidents have won second terms, and the last 2 have completed their second terms. We just haven't seen a lot of that recently in Missouri. Any reason why?
Well, Missouri is a 50-50 state. We're about half and half Republican and Democrat, and so things do turn over. Things change. People who enter the field of politics are entering one of the most fickle areas in the world, because they're putting their entire future on public opinion. And public opinion in Missouri swings back and forth. And if it swings back and forth 5 percentage points, that's going to make a huge difference in who holds the office of governor or senator, or basically any other office. So Missouri is evenly divided, and it's not unusual for parties to switch at the end of when an office becomes open. So we'll have to see what happens 4 years from now, when Jay Nixon leaves office and can't succeed himself. It'll be a very spirited race for governor in 2016.
Right, we were in the era of term limits here in Missouri, and this is going to be, and actually Governor Nixon joked in one of his first news conferences after being elected. He started laughing, saying, "Hey, I'm term limited." Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see, and we'll get more into that as the day goes on, because he is going to be the governor for a second term. But in terms of Missouri politics, it's Republicans who have the power in the Capitol building right now, and a veto-proof majority in the House and Senate.
Except for one thing, and that is the Republicans do have divisions within the majority.
That is true.
And so the Democrats are going to be certainly well aware that they are going to be needed if the Republicans want to pass a bill. On many occasions and many issues, they're likely to have to call upon some Democrats to give them the votes to get the majority within their own caucus, because the caucuses are split. I don't think it'll be as bad this time as it has been in the last couple of years. The Republicans, especially in the Senate, which I cover, have been badly fractured in the Senate. But we're hoping that this time around things will be a little bit better.
What can we expect from today's inauguration speech?
We can expect the governor to talk a lot about the education programs that he has in mind. He especially wants to focus on early childhood education, and he wants to focus on a lot of higher education. Education issues are things that he's very passionate about. He's also interested in, he's going to be meeting with education people after the inauguration ceremony for a while to talk about where he wants to go and what kind of a message he wants to give the folks to go into that next term with. So he's going to be talking education. He's going to talk about history today a little bit too during his inaugural speech. Inaugural speeches generally are general. They don't get into a whole lot of specifics. The specifics will come in a couple of weeks with the State of the State message on the 28th, and we'll be there to cover that too. But right now he's going to be talking about some general philosophical, historical things that have gone on in his first term in history in Missouri, and where he'd like to go in general terms for the next 4 years.
Well, because this is a cold day, we're kind of having some technical difficulties, so we're going to try and change this up on the fly. I'm just going to hold this microphone. Okay. Because it's cold, do you think he will cut anything out of it and try and make it a quicker speech?
You know, if the wind was blowing, I think he might. But as long as that wind stays down and the sun gives us a little bit of warmth,
it's not as bad as I thought it might be.
No,
it's pretty
pleasant.
It is actually pretty pleasant. It's a little crisp, but it's still not too bad out here. As you can start to see that people are starting to find some of their seats as the parade just wraps up. There are some people taking a look on the stage on where they're going to be seating, and people are starting to file into their seats here in front of the Capitol building.
There are 3,840 seats that have been set up for this. And normally, if the day were nicer, we might even have some people sitting out here on the other side of the driveway from us in their folding chairs or blankets or something. But normally, if you don't have a ticket to get into the 3,840 seats, might as well stay at home where it's warm and enjoy it on television. Folks who are watching us right now.
Absolutely, and I'm assuming that there are people who do make this a tradition. They come out here every 4 years and want to see the inauguration of a governor, because it is very historical.
It is. It's a special event for Jefferson City. Tonight's inaugural ball is probably the social event of the year in town. But to be part of history, and that's what we're talking about here, is history on the fly. And a lot of people want to come out and be part of that. I think what you'll see, though, is you'll see some people who are Republicans who are not going to be here because he's not their guy. But you will see a lot of Democrats, loyal Democrats, who are here because this is the reward of what they worked for all year or the last 2 years or 4 years to get him back into office. So those are the good, loyal party folks we'll see, plus a lot of friends of members of the General Assembly and members of other state officials. Friends of those will be the ones who fill in most of these chairs behind us.
Will we see any politicians from the past who maybe are out of office and have decided to come back and take part in the ceremonies?
You know, every now and then we might see some, but I haven't heard of any who are going to be here. Bob Holden still lives in Jefferson City, but I don't know if he's going to be here. So I'm not sure who all is going to be present among other former office holders.
This certainly is an event that the historical nature of it does, I mentioned earlier, it has changed a little bit. So there are aspects of it that have changed over the years. Is there a big change that people are going to notice maybe than compared to 20, 30, even 50 years ago?
Probably not, because it's all a very scripted program. It's all done with a notebook like we have in front of us, the National Guard. When they get ready to really start working on the inauguration, they get out a big notebook, a situation book that was compiled after the last inauguration. And they start to go through that, and they have a schedule that is worked out to the minute. And as they go through that schedule, they basically have to fill in the blanks with who's going to do what, who's going to pray, who's going to sing. We know what time various people are going to be sworn into office. So they've got the notebook that they can go with, and the schedule is pretty well hammered out long in advance as to who's going to be doing what and when they're going to be doing it. So it's not a big change very often. The biggest change is going to be, for example, whether there's a National Guard flyover of some kind, or whether there is who sings. But that's really not a big change in the way this happens. If you go back and you look through the old journals of the Missouri legislature back into the 1850s, and you go to Inauguration Day, you'll see that pretty much the same format is followed all those years ago. And the swearing in, and the governor gives his speech. Most gubernatorial speeches on Inauguration Day are not very long, for which we're usually grateful.
Being mid to late January,
yeah,
yes.
Being that January. Now, in the old days, inside they could be a little bit longer, but in the old days, the governor would give his inaugural speech, then he would give a State of the State speech, and then he would give a budget speech. He would give 3 speeches. And they now have collapsed the budget speech into the State of the State message, so it's all one. So we only get 2 speeches every 4 years from the governor like this. So, but it's all very much scripted. It's all very much a formula, if you will, that lays out how it's going to be done. And that's how they do it so efficiently.
The sun, as you can see, has come out a little bit.
Oh, and it feels so good.
It doesn't feel too bad.
No.
I mean, if a sun can feel good at 18 degrees or 16 degrees, whatever we're saying it is right now, it actually doesn't feel too bad. Yeah. You mentioned that it is scripted out, and we do have a plan in place here that we're looking at. You know, 11:35, 11:36, 11:40, the bells are going to ring at noon, and sometimes the bells, sometimes things get done early, and it doesn't really coordinate with the time.
Well, there have been a couple of times in recent years where the governor's been sworn in early. Bob Holden was doing so well, and everything was moving along so quickly that they swore him in 15 minutes early. Church bells didn't even ring. And then 4 years ago, Jay Nixon was sworn in a few minutes early. And they managed to figure out a way to coordinate the church bells with that swearing in, even though it was before noon. The term of office doesn't actually take place, doesn't begin until noon. So that's why they swear them in at 12 o'clock like that. But sometimes they've moved it up a little bit for one reason or another, usually by accident, which sometimes catches people a little bit off guard, especially if they're in broadcasting. The problem is that, as you know, we have things that we do by the minute.
Yes.
And we tell audiences, join us at a certain time.
That's right.
For a certain event. Well, those people who were listening to the Missourinet coverage a few years ago with Bob Holden, who thought they were going to be joining to hear him sworn in and hear the speech at noon, they joined in and they were halfway through.
Excuse me, sir.
They're halfway through the. They were halfway through the speech already. So that was one of the perils of live television, I guess, isn't it?
I was about to say, that is why this is called live, whether it is on Missourinet.com at ABC17news.com or at 11 o'clock on ABC 17. Sometimes people think we're taking tickets. I mean, I guess we kind of do look a little official now in terms of taking tickets and maybe ushering people to their seats.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we don't have that job today.
Yeah, boy, I'm glad of that. But it's just part of the live business. But anyway, a lot of people come in here, and a lot of people come to Jefferson City. This is a big tourism day for Jefferson City. The hotel people do quite well.
Yes, they do.
Like this. We're looking for a couple of people to drop by and say hello to us today.
Do we have? And is the other microphone working, or
we're good?
The stick microphone. Because we've got a guest. We have because we were having some technical difficulties a little bit earlier, and so we were kind of working with what we have here, but because we do have some guests who we hope to get to here before 11 o'clock. Don't know quite yet if we're going to, but hopefully we don't have too many more people come up to the table. This is a first for me, as I mentioned earlier. This is my first inauguration, and I really look forward to it because this is something that is, and I've said the word historic quite a bit, and it is a very historic time for the state of Missouri because you just don't get this very often. I mean, I hope that people understand the tradition of it. I hope people understand the historical nature of it because it is something that has been passed along as a tradition over the decades and the centuries.
Generation by generation, it's the kind of thing where it's part of the political process, but it's also a mark in the political process every 4 years. It's a renewal, if you will, of one kind or another that says this is a new start, a new beginning. And frequently the governors have talked about it being a new beginning in one form or another in their inaugural address. They have different ways of putting it.
Right.
But sometimes they do just say new beginning in their remarks. And so we'll see just exactly how the governor addresses the new beginning part. It's kind of a renewed beginning, I guess, when you're sworn in for a second term.
While we have the time right now, let's bring in our first person. Jerry, why don't you grab a chair and walk on over here and kind of get between Bob and I.
Yeah.
And joining us now is Jerry Ford. Jerry is going to have a very big job. It's your job to provide the music for the inaugural ball.
That's right.
This evening. And you did this. You had the same job in 2009.
Yes.
Jerry's from Southeast Missouri, former state representative. And what is it? Give us an idea of what it is like to have that kind of honor, to be asked to basically provide the music in the background for the inauguration.
Well, obviously it's a hoot, and this is our 6th in a row. For the last 12 years, my orchestra has been the music for the Grand March and for the dancing at the ball. So it's a great honor for us, and it's just something we look forward to, and we've been very fortunate in order to able to play this many times here in Jeff City.
I've talked with you in the past, being my roots and from Southeast Missouri, and you've been playing the trumpet for a very, very long time. What's it like to get up there in front of everybody and play the music for the inaugural ball, considering it is very much a traditional event and very historical in nature?
Well, obviously it's exhilarating. I mean, there's nothing like it. If I could make a living full time, I'd stand in front of that 14-piece orchestra every night. But, you know, they've said, you know how you make $1 million playing big band music? You start with 2 million.
Is there a difference in the kind of music you play? Is there a difference in the kind of music you play for Republicans or Democrats?
No, we're an ecumenical orchestra. But of course, what we do here is we'll start playing some Henry Mancini and Nat King Cole, Andy Williams, that type of thing, and then we'll go to some James Taylor and some Motown, and then later in the evening we'll crank it up even more.
Any special requests this year from the governor?
No, not really, other than, of course, traditionally, down through the ages, the first dance is always the Missouri Waltz. So Jay and Georgianne will start the official dance after the Grand March is over, which takes probably an hour and a half, and then we'll have the other elected officials join them, and we won't leave them out there very long, and then we'll have everybody else join them, all in the Missouri Waltz to kick it off. So it's always it's a fun thing, you know.
It is, and it must be an honor as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't be any better. It's a highlight for us, no question.
Jerry?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, did you have your band here when Ashcroft was sworn in? Did you do that one?
I don't think so.
And the reason being?
That was one time that the governor did not dance, the first dance. He played the piano there.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. That's right.
So things do change.
But most of the governors and first ladies have taken a few little dance lessons beforehand. just to make sure, because they're standing out there in the front of God and everybody, and the TV cameras all over the state. So it is a little intimidating for them, you know. So, but they usually get through it pretty well, and I usually don't leave them out there very long by themselves. I pull all of the elected statewide officials in pretty quick.
Well, being big Mizzou fans, they are very familiar with that tune, and everyone's looking forward to hearing your music tonight and the orchestra's music tonight. Jerry, thanks again for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. We're looking forward to it too.
All right, Jerry Ford. Jerry Ford will be the band leader tonight for the inaugural ball, and we are where are we right now in our schedule? People are still filing in a little bit. Let me get the chair out of the way here. You can slide back over.
All right.
Nobody's come and asked us for directions yet.
Yeah,
on how to find their seat. But you were talking about, and I'm just going to put this down right now and go back to the other microphone. And you mentioned John Ashcroft. John Ashcroft, when he took his inaugural ball in 1981, his first one was he won the '80 election.
Yeah.
The inauguration in 1981, he decided he wasn't going to dance.
Well, I don't think he's from a faith tradition that places much hope in dance.
And
so I think that's why he did that. But he was a very accomplished pianist, and probably still is. I haven't talked to him for a while. He's in Washington now as a lobbyist and runs a lobbying company there. But he was a very accomplished pianist, and so he played the Missouri Waltz that night.
It's and being that the governor and the first lady are big Mizzou fans, they're very familiar with that tune.
Well, the Missouri Waltz, of course, is I think one of the worst state songs in the country because it has nothing to do with Missouri.
Right.
If you think of the lyrics, it's a song about a song that somebody learned while sitting on their mammy's knee in Missouri, and that's the only reference to the state of Missouri in the song. There's another song about Missouri that's just been done in the last couple of years that I think is much more melodic, and I wish the legislature would show some vision and adopt a new state song that actually has something to do with our state.
Well, it's almost like it's morphed into about the state. It's amazing how that has done over the years, that is now, I mean, it's as much a part of the state, and we hear it so often, it's associated with the state, even if the song has absolutely nothing to do with the state.
That's right. Harry Truman hated it. Harry Truman thought it was a lousy song for a state song. And in fact, it was enacted because people thought he liked it a lot, and he thought he would just absolutely hated it. So we perhaps need to, as long as we're correcting history one of these days, maybe we can correct our state song.
Well, people are still filing in here to the Capitol building. We are still we've got about 5 minutes left until we actually start our broadcast over on ABC 17, as well as remaining here on Missourinet.com and ABC17news.com. So you can always join us on the TV side, or stay here right in front of your computer, or however you are watching us this afternoon. But starting to file in, we're starting to see some people show up. Some of the seats are being filled, or at least trying to be warmed at this point.
Yeah, the ceremony will actually start at 11:15. So we'll be sitting here talking to you and explaining what's going on in various forums up until that point. And then when things happen at when the Senate President Pro Tem, Tom Dempsey, calls everybody to order at the platform, that's when they'll start the actual activities. It will include some oaths being taken, songs. They'll be talking later on after the governor is sworn in. There'll be a 19-gun salute, which will be fired from the other side of the Capitol on the backside. But there's still a lot of ceremony to be done, and there's still a lot of activities. We'll have some prayers, we'll have some music, we'll have no speeches until the governor actually speaks. He is reserved to have the only speech on this occasion. So we're just waiting for all of that to unfold for us. So.
Should be and with the sun being out, clouds have broke up a little bit, very bright. It's going to be a nice day. It's actually going to be very nice. It's something that people shouldn't be dreading. They should actually be out and enjoying this one. This is pretty good.
Yeah. We can't complain now.
It could be worse.
It has been.
It has been. And
in fact, a couple of years ago, it started to rain, just as the governor was a couple of inaugurations ago.
Matt Luntz?
Yeah, it started to rain just a little bit, just after he got done speaking. So a lot of people, in fact, it started to rain during his speech. Umbrellas started going up. And as soon as he got done, people beat it for the inside.
You said this is your 12th inauguration?
Yeah.
Does it ever get old?
No. Because it's new every time. I mean, we talk about the formula that we go through here, the schedule that's very tight that we go through, but yet it's always fascinating to watch, just because of the celebration that's going on, just because you want to see what the new governor has to say, to see who the new people are. It's just a part of our political system, and some people aren't turned on by politics at all. Other people find it to be addictive. as observers or as politicians themselves. So it's just part of that system that is so much in the blood of a lot of people, and that's what we enjoy.
When we also start heading out over to ABC 17 for our live coverage beginning at the top of the hour, we're going to delve a little bit more into the politics end of this, and that has to be the fact that the governor is term limited. He is in his final term. We're still don't quite know. We figure he's running for another office in 4 years. We don't know officially what that is, right. But if he, with him being out, that means we're going to have 2 new people running for the governor's office. Obviously, some rumors about who could be in line for that race. Certainly a kickoff to what should be a very interesting 4 years in Missouri politics, considering that we're going to have a lot of change in 4 years.
Well, just about everything is going to come open in 4 years. The Secretary of State is brand new this time, so we don't know if he's going to jump in some of the direction. But when the governor leaves, that means everything moves up. Everybody wants to move up, or could move up if they could. So it really turns that election year into a wild card year. And it'll be interesting to see how some people spend the next 4 years positioning themselves for 2016. It'll be interesting to see if we change some campaign laws on financing and how that affects, because a lot of people were really turned off by the way the money was flowing in this campaign. So we'll be seeing just how this all shakes out in the next 4 years. It's not going to just be a governor and the legislature doing their usual work. There's going to be a lot of other people out there who are trying to figure out what their future is. Because what happens today is the start of the future for a lot of other people who have political ambitions of their own. Dreams are made from this point on, and some dreams will be broken in November of 2016. But from here on, a lot of people who have dreams are going to start to put some movement behind them to see where those dreams will carry them.
And some people are turned off by politics because they think the campaigns are too long. Campaigns have already begun.
Oh yes, they have.
The campaigns have already begun for 2016, not only nationally, but here in the state of Missouri as well.
That's right. People are starting to line up, supporters. People are starting to let it be known they're interested. Trial balloons are floating out there, and people are trying to find if they have anybody who's attracted to what they might offer, what they could bring, and so the water's already being tested by a lot of folks. Politics is a constant movement. It's not something that just starts and stops every 4 years.
Stay with us here on Missourinet.com as well as ABC17News.com, and we're about to join our viewers on ABC 17 as our continuing coverage of the 2013 inauguration continues.
Hello, I'm ABC 17's Christy Reeder here. We just wanted to let you know that we're leaving the President's press conference right now to bring you a special presentation of the governor's inauguration in Jefferson City. If you want to continue watching the President's press conference, which is his last one in his first term in office, you can watch that over on Fox 22. So just to let you know, you can watch the President's press conference over on Fox 22. Here on ABC 17 News, we're going to have coverage of Governor Jay Nixon's second inauguration in Jefferson City. ABC 17's Ryan Tate and MissouriNet's Bob Priddy are both live outside the state capitol building, giving you full coverage.
ABC 17 News on KMIZ starts now.
Well, good morning. Good morning and welcome to the 2013 inauguration of Governor Jay Nixon. We are live here in front of the Capitol as we are about an hour away from the governor taking the oath of office for his second term as governor of the state of Missouri. We'd also like to continue to welcome our viewers on Missourinet.com as well as ABC17News.com. They've been watching the festivities go on behind us for the last half an hour. I'm ABC 17's Ryan Tate. Joining me is MissouriNet's Bob Priddy. And Bob, as we were saying a little bit earlier, this is a very historical moment for the state of Missouri. It happens every 4 years, but there's a lot of tradition involved with this. There's a lot of historical aspects of this, not only because it's an inauguration, but there's a lot of historical subplots to this as well.
Every time we have an inauguration, there's something going on in the background, whether it's the mixture of who's the governor and who's in charge of the legislature. That's always one factor. Another factor that's involved in this sort of an event is where the future begins for some of these folks. Jay Nixon's being sworn in for his second four-year term. He will not be able to be sworn in for a third four-year term. And so people already are starting to think, who's going to replace him? Who's going to replace those who are down the ballot, down the ticket from him?
Excuse me,
who are below him in offices. So we have a situation where a lot of people are already thinking 4 years down the road. And many of the people that you're going to see on your ballot 4 years from now are people who are going to be on this platform, who are also being sworn in today for their offices. For some, it's going to be a third term, like the Lieutenant Governor, Peter Kinder, only the second man in Missouri history to be sworn in for a third term. And, or Jason Kander, who's being sworn in for his first term as Secretary of State. And a lot of people are going to be looking at where they're going 4 years from now. They'll be thinking about that, and they're going to be sitting there thinking, as Jay Nixon delivers his speech, that could be me 4 years from now.
That's right.
So we have a lot of things going on in the background.
And we've got the band,
music.
including the music. The band has just fired up behind us. So obviously, you could probably hear some of that. Now, another aspect of this inauguration that really isn't as bad as I think some people thought it might be is the weather. We're sitting right now at about, I don't know, about 18, 20 degrees out here. The sun is out, just a few clouds in the sky. First time I've actually had to do a weather forecast right now. This could be a lot worse. This is by no means the coldest or the worst inauguration weather we've ever seen here.
Well, certainly it is not. And for those who've been watching inaugurations outdoors in Jefferson City, and they started doing this in 1965, the only time that we've ever moved indoors because of the weather was 1997. The temperature was just a little above zero that day, and we'd had some snow the night before, and Mel Carnahan decided he would have his second inauguration inside, which set off a mad scramble for people in our business to get in there because there's not a lot of room.
There's no seats.
But there was one time when some of us who still have vivid memories of 1977, when Joe Teasdale decided to have his inauguration outdoors, even though we'd had a foot of snow the night before. The inauguration parade was canceled. The temperature at noon on that day was -2. The wind chill was -45. It was so cold, the pianist who was here to play the piano got frostbite on her fingers. Some people got frostbitten ears. The National Guard security forces were not allowed to be outside more than about 15 minutes at a time. And I remember those of us sitting on these metal stands up here in the breeze were worried about Secretary of State Jimmy Kirkpatrick, who was not a young man and was without a hat or hair that day. Secretary of State Kirkpatrick was bald, and we just worried all during the broadcast about that. But fortunately, all of us survived that, and we were very fortunate. But I've never been so cold, and I don't think I've ever had so many parts of my body that didn't work after inauguration. I did that day. Once we got done, we had to stand around, kind of do some exercises to even walk. That's how cold it got to be, with your feet on an aluminum stand like this with -45 degrees. Oh my gosh!
This is balmy. This is tropical compared to that.
Yeah, and there have been times when we've had a little rain. Matt Blunt, a few years ago, just about the time he was done, it started to sprinkle, and some umbrellas went up. People knew it might happen, so they were prepared. But otherwise, it's been kind of like this. It's been chilly. Temperatures in the 20s, low 30s most of the time. It's January in Missouri.
Exactly.
Typical January day. And sometimes we've had sun like this, sometimes we haven't. But we've been very fortunate today, I think, to have this sun break through. And it looks like Sharon Ray's forecast was just about right.
It usually is, and just about all the time it is. Despite living in the state of Missouri for the last more than a decade, this is actually my first inauguration. So thankfully, I've got a tour guide here. Bob, this is your 12th inauguration?
Yep. My first one was 1969 with Warren Hearns.
And that was his second?
That was his second inauguration.
That was his second inauguration.
He was the one that moved these ceremonies outdoors. Until then, they'd all been held indoors in the House chamber. They were joint sessions of the legislature, and that's what we're going to have today. An inauguration ceremony is a joint session of the General Assembly. And so you'll have the President Pro Tem of the Senate who's presiding, and that'll be Tom Dempsey from St. Peters in St. Charles County. And the reason he presides is because he is now the highest ranking state official who already has taken his oath for a second term. He is the number 3 person in the line of gubernatorial succession. You have the governor, the lieutenant governor, then the president pro tem of the Senate. And so since the legislature came in last week and all of those people took their oath of offices, he is the highest-ranking state official who's taken his oath for a new term. So he's presiding over this event today. And that's traditional. The Senate President Pro Tem does preside over these events.
Because despite the election that was decided in November, it doesn't become official till they take the oath of office.
That's right.
Just
That's
before noon, and the governor is the last
That's
one
right.
to take it at noon.
Yeah, the term of office for the governor is noon today. So he'll be sworn in at noon if all the timing works out, which it sometimes doesn't. But there have been times when we've sworn in a governor early in the last few elections, or last few inaugurations. But that is not something that we're going to worry about today, because the last time we talked to anybody about this, we were being told that it was going to happen at noon. We talked to Senator Dempsey last week and made sure he knew what the custom is. And he rehearsed yesterday out here. They have the script all for him. So he's expected to have things well in hand and follow the schedule that he has. We've
got God Bless America playing in the background right now. Since your first inauguration of Governor Hearns back in 1969,
yep.
How has security changed in these events? What have you noticed specifically in the way things have changed?
Security has changed a great deal. Primarily, it started to change a lot after the Oklahoma City bombing. That's when we started to see the guard, what we call the guard shack, over on the east side of the Capitol. That was built in front of the basement entrance of the Capitol. We've seen more security at events like this, just because there's a large number of people, and of course that could lead somebody to be thinking mischievous thoughts. So security is much tighter now. In fact, we have badges. We have to go through a process to be certified really to be here, you and I, and all of the other folks in the press. And they clamp down this building on Sunday. That's when the security really starts to take over. They start to block off streets for the parade. If you look around here, for example, over in the parking lot to our left, the Highway Department parking lot, there's a big Highway Patrol bomb squad van sitting there. There are numerous ambulances and other emergency vehicles that are here that I don't remember back in '65. In '65, in fact, our broadcast position with a local radio station was up behind the platform, up behind the Thomas Jefferson statue. That's where we broadcast from. We haven't been able to get up there for a long time. We've moved around a little bit through the years and where our broadcast positions were and where television cameras were, but it's been this way, and it's been more regularly set up this way for the last several inaugurations. But the big change in security came after the Oklahoma City bombing of the Murrah building.
So what can we expect from the speech that Governor Nixon is going to give? Are we going to get any kind of specifics, or is he going to save that for the State of the State address?
I don't think we'll see any specifics in the inaugural address. We seldom see specifics. The governor saves that for the State of the State address to the legislature. This year it'll be in 2 weeks. That's when he lays out his legislative platform. He'll lay out his plans for the state budget in 2 weeks. But today he'll be talking in general, more philosophical terms. He'll talk about some of the priorities that he has, but even in talking about the priorities, he'll be talking primarily in general terms about his interest in education and the need to further early childhood education, higher education, and all forms of education generally. He'll touch on some other things. He'll touch on some history. He'll touch on some general political philosophy. The speech probably will be less than 20 minutes long. They normally are not very long at all, because what do you say other than this is a new beginning, and I think we should go in this direction because the people of Missouri need to be lifted up and improved in this way. That's kind of the way the governors have said it through the years. And we'll see some variation of that from the governor today. As I said, it's to be a short speech, 17, 20 minutes or so, partly because you don't give a 40-minute speech in January outdoors in Jefferson City, Missouri. It's very simple. So
it's good. That's good policy.
He saves the good thing.
It's just very good policy. Senate President Pro Tem Tom Dempsey will be speaking at about 11:15. And again, this is on a schedule. They try to keep it down to the minute as they possibly can, but things have changed over the years, and the schedule has been altered. But we've got no thoughts that might actually happen this time. As you can see, people are filing behind us, and filing into their seats behind us as they get ready for the inauguration ceremonies here at the Capitol.
A lot of the folks have been inside where it's warm.
Yes, they have been.
And a lot of other folks have been out watching the parade as it was wound through downtown Jefferson City. But now the parade's done. Now the word is out that the band is playing, so it's time to come in, come out to the cold from inside in the warm. It's time to get in here from the parade and get your seats. There are 3,840 folding chairs that have been set up here for people who are friends of or political acquaintances with, not only the governor, but a number of other people who are part of this event. There are quite a few people up on the podium who will be part of the event either as onlookers or those who are being sworn in, and they have friends and political allies who are down here, and it's kind of a reward for a lot of work that has helped your person get elected or your party get elected and stay in control of this or that office or this or that chamber of the legislature. So that's the kind of people we're seeing mostly here, are those who've been plugged into this whole system all this time, and they're getting a chance to celebrate up close and personal. It's their reward.
And some of the state politicians have actually been filing in right behind us. John Wright, the new representative from Columbia, just filed by a couple of moments earlier, and they're getting ready to head to their seats as we get ready for the festivities to really begin here. Historically speaking, we haven't had a lot of two-term governors inaugurated, basically, for their second term, at least not recently. The most recent one happened in 1997 when Mel Carnahan took his second oath of office.
That's right. Mel Carnahan was the last one to be sworn in for a second consecutive four-year term. The last one to finish a second consecutive four-year term was John Ashcroft, and that was before Carnahan. So that tells you how long it's been since somebody has been sworn in and has finished 8 straight years. It's rare. The governors were not allowed to have a second consecutive four-year term until Warren Hearns, when the Constitution was changed, letting him run to succeed himself. And he did, and he was sworn in 1969. Christopher Bond was elected after him, lost a re-election bid, then came back and reclaimed the governorship. Ashcroft was in for 2 full terms. Carnahan was elected for 2 full terms. Jay Nixon now has been elected for 2 full terms. But otherwise, Matt Blunt was a one-termer. Roger Wilson was in for about 2 months after Carnahan's death. And Bob Holden was a one-termer. So we've not had consecutive terms of governor very often in the state of Missouri, despite the fact that we're allowed to do it.
So in your opinion, what is that going to mean for politics in this state in the next 4 years?
That means a lot of people from this point on, in fact, they already have started in many ways, a lot of people are going to be jockeying for the next job that they want to get elected to. And already some of that has started, and we're going to be seeing a lot of people who are on that stand who are going to be thinking themselves already, where will I be 4 years from now? What do I want to spend the next 4 years gearing up to run for and gearing up to win? So the future is up here on this platform today. If you want to know who's going to be running for office and you want to see what they look like dressed up in the cold, in 2016, this will be a chance to see some faces up there of the people that you're going to be hearing a lot about in the next few years, especially those who are being sworn in today. I will mention one office that's not being sworn in today is auditor. The state auditor is elected in the off year. Tom Schweik was elected 2 years ago. His term runs out 2 years from now, but that's the only one that is not elected on this 4-year cycle with all of these other 5.
So we're going to see the Secretary of State sworn in, we're going to see the Treasurer sworn in, the Lieutenant Governor,
Attorney General,
and the Governor.
Right.
And the Attorney General, obviously, Chris Koster, it might be one of those people who might be looking at taking the last oath of office when the inauguration ceremonies begin in 2017.
Yeah, and he's going to be the one, I think, taking the first oath of office today. He is number 6 in the progression down, and they work from 6, 5, so on. So he'll be among the first ones to be sworn in today. But Chris Koster, I think, is the one a lot of people expect to run for governor in 4 years. And he's probably not going to be alone. There will be others. These are becoming, as you notice in our elections, we're starting to get more and more candidates in the primaries these days. And so we have very spirited primary elections in Missouri now. And I wouldn't be surprised if Chris Koster runs. The thing about Chris Koster is, until about 5.5 years ago, he was a Republican.
That's right.
You remember, he switched parties, and he's now a Democrat. And I think at the very beginning of that, he had to prove to the Democrats that he was, in fact, not just a Republican in sheep's clothing. Well, he's worn the title Democrat now for 5.5 years, and I think he's pretty well established his credentials. But we'll be interested to see if anybody else is trying to challenge that.
And before we even get to there, we're going to have an interesting scenario possibly play out. We mentioned that Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder is taking his 3rd oath of office as lieutenant governor. He is not term limited, despite some of the other offices in the state that are term limited. He is not, but he has expressed interest in filling Representative Joanne Emerson's seat. She was the former U.S. representative from Southeast Missouri, Missouri's 8th district. He's shown interest in that position. She is resigning, and so we will find out within the next few months if our lieutenant governor will actually be trying to run for the U.S. Congress from the 8th district.
And if he is elected, and I think that's such a Republican district, whoever the Republican nominee is would have to be considered the favorite. But if he is elected, goes to Washington, that creates a vacancy in the lieutenant governor's office. And there's a lot of discussion that's been going on now in the Capitol about whether Governor Nixon will have the authority to appoint a replacement for lieutenant governor. The statutes seem to contradict themselves. Well, they seem to be vague to some folks. I've read them, but I'm a layman. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. But to me, it doesn't seem like the governor has the power to appoint a successor. There's legislation now before the General Assembly that would clarify some of this. But if the office remains vacant, what happens to all of the duties that are assigned to that office? Who takes those up? What happens to the staff of the lieutenant governor if there's no lieutenant governor? Who carries out the functions of lieutenant governor? Under gubernatorial succession, if there's no lieutenant governor, the Senate President Pro Tem is the person who is the next heartbeat away from being governor. Does that person assume any of the powers or obligations of lieutenant governor? That's not clear in the law either. So we could be seeing some history here today, not only with the third term for Peter Kinder, but down the road, if it turns out that he's not going to be around for a full term, what next? Will there be lawsuits? Will there be legislation? What will the legislation cover? How will they be able to fill in all the blanks that this situation points up exists?
Has the governor already come out and said that he believes he should be able to appoint his the lieutenant governor?
Yep, he thinks he can.
But we don't know if that's the case or not.
Well, you know, he was the attorney general for 16 years. But somebody once said a long time ago, an attorney general's opinion is no more significant than the opinion of any other lawyer, except he's the lawyer for the state.
Right.
And so we'll just have to see how this all plays out.
Should be a very interesting scenario, and we're not even to the point yet where we're talking about elections where we're actually real elections that are already scheduled. This is going to be something that's going to come up within the next few months.
What we're talking about today is just the beginning of a new 4-year term for the governor and all these people. But you see, as we talked about earlier, this is the backstory.
Right.
And there's lots of backstories that go on. Anytime you get around politics, there's more to it than just what we see out front. And it's fascinating to watch all of this interplay. It's one reason it's fun to watch this.
It is fun to watch. I mean, I'm not so sure if you're in it. You're right. I'm not sure if most people want to be in it. I think some people aren't really happy with the way it plays out sometimes. But stepping back and the position we have, it's sort of entertaining to watch once in a while.
Yeah, I really think for people who stand back at a distance and watch politics, it's easy to say, "Oh, I want nothing to do with this." If you get close enough to actually see how it works and see the interpersonal workings of the political system, then it becomes really interesting stuff because it becomes really human. And you understand that what happens is not remote, it's not mechanical, it's really a very human process. Real people are doing this stuff, and they're as real as you and I. And it'll be flesh and blood folks up there.
It'll be very interesting to also see how the kind of relationship that Governor Nixon has with the legislature, being that it is so heavily Republican in both the House and the Senate. It'll be interesting to see what kind of relationship he has because, again, we're talking about him being term limited, and we're also talking about him maybe looking for the next race to run in, whether that is against Roy Blunt for the U.S. Senate seat in 4 years or whether he has got any kind of national aspirations.
Yeah, well, there's capitals and politics are places where rumor thrives and lives and loves to live. And so we hear a lot of rumors and a lot of talk, and I just prefer to wait and they'll tell me what they want to do.
That's right.
Speculation is not my business as a journalist.
Interpreting tea leaves, i.e. interpreting votes on the way people are going, sometimes can get very dicey. You never know what we might actually see.
Yeah, so I just soon wait until they decide, okay, I'm going to do this, and then we'll report that. But the speculation is something that we do over coffee down in the cafeteria in the Capitol.
Right.
Which we do, by the way, have a new cafeteria in the
yes.
Capitol.
Yes, you guys do downstairs.
Really nice, really, really nice.
It's a lot better than the old cafeteria in the basement.
Yeah, this is a total makeover. In fact, I went down there for breakfast a little while ago. It was pretty good.
And believe me, media people know where the good places to eat are.
That's right.
We always have, and we always will.
One of the first things we scout out is who has candy in the dishes and where the food is.
Absolutely. People are still filing in, taking trying to get their seats warm because it is about 18 to 20 degrees out here. And you can see people up on the stage as they are milling around, waiting to see as we get the festivities underway. The assigned seating up there and all of the different rows of seats here. He said more than 3,800 seats.
Yep, 3,800
are out here on the lawn.
I understand.
So we're still trying to wait as we're getting ready to really start the ceremony. At 11:15 is when a really official beginning is supposed to be, and that is Senate Majority Leader, or Senate President Pro Tem Tom Dempsey. As he was just newly elected to that position, taking over for Rob Mayer.
Yep, Rob Mayer has retired to become a circuit judge. He was term limited out, and so he's now a circuit judge in Southwest Missouri. Tom Dempsey is the new President Pro Tem, and as things work, he could be the Pro Tem for 4 years if he wants to do that, but he's now the man in charge. Ron Richards from Joplin, a state senator who's now the majority floor leader. And Jolie Justice, who lives in Kansas City, but actually represents Callaway County and Audrain County, Montgomery County because of redistricting. She's the new minority floor leader in the Senate. So this is an interesting case where we had redistricting of the legislature last year, and her district number was assigned to a Central Missouri district. And since she still has 2 years left of her Senate term, she now is the senator from Central Missouri, even though she's a Kansas City lawyer. She does have some property in Callaway County, so she actually is a resident. But she's kind of enjoying this dual nature. And I keep asking her how's she doing in her district. Has she been to the Lions Club in Montgomery City yet? Things like that.
Yes, and to take I-70, just keep going. Don't try to veer off to come to Jefferson City. Just keep going and cover most of the district here.
But I think the people that meet her in this new district will like Jolie Justice. She's very sharp and very committed to this system.
Today just starts the festivities. Obviously, there's also the inaugural ball tonight. A lot different than when planned than when Bob Holder had his inauguration in 2001.
Oh my! When Holden's inauguration was almost $1 million. He had 4 inaugural balls that time. We had 2 big tents right out here on the front lawn, and they were heated tents, and people were dancing there. There was the inaugural ball inside in the rotunda, and then there was another one somewhere else. I think down at the Capitol Plaza. I don't remember exactly. But there was all kinds of things that went on. There were fireworks at 11:30 at night, which annoyed a lot of people, surprised a lot of people, and scared the heck out of a few. And so Bob had a big inauguration. That one cost $900 to $1 million. I don't remember the exact number. Governor Nixon's folks tell us this one's going to cost about $150,000, and most of that is going to come out of leftover campaign funds. He had something like $400,000 left over. And so he's paying a lot of these. There's about $30,000 that the state is going to pick up, and the expenses of the National Guard, printed programs, these things that we're wearing here that let us sit where we are. So there are some incidental expenses like that, but most of it is going to be borne by Nixon campaign leftover money. Part of the event later today will be a big barbecue festival at a hotel just down the hill. 4 years ago, it was a big potluck meal. So food is very much a part of this, and we're going to, when we get done, I'll bet you and I are probably going to have some barbecue.
We'll have to wait and see our schedules go, but I'm always, if it's barbecue, then yes, I more than likely will be there.
We've got barbecue from 2 great Kansas City barbecue places and 1 in St. Louis. It'll be served to about 2,000 people, including the governor. He's going to get down there too. Because
Bob Holden's inauguration was so expensive, did Matt Blunt and Governor Jay Nixon really make an effort to say we're not going to be indulgent in our celebration?
That was a big point of Matt Blunt's inauguration. He wanted to make sure that people knew that this was a very bare bones inauguration. He was being very thrifty, and he made a big point of that. And so the Nixon administration people have done the same thing, not because they're pointing fingers at Bob Holden. Holden had a great vision of a great unifying event for everybody, and it was quite a thing, quite a deal. But a lot of folks are thinking that maybe we shouldn't quite go that far, especially with these tight economic times.
Exactly, and that probably has to play some sort of role in it. I mean, if we're going to be talking about tough economic times in the state, you really can't be overindulgent when it comes to parties.
That's right, especially on Inauguration Day.
Especially on Inauguration Day.
This is kind of like a wedding, folks. You can have a big wedding but a lousy marriage, or you can have a nice wedding and a great marriage, or you can have a little bit of both. But I think people right now are more concerned with having a nice little wedding and having a great a great event come after, a great life to come after it, and that's what they're really for.
Well, Jay Nixon was the Attorney General for 16 years. He came out very early in his last term saying he was going to run for governor. He was going to run for governor, and he has won his 2 elections very easily.
By substantial margins both times. Part of it is because he had this enormous name recognition because of all the years he was Attorney General. Part of it was because he had a great organization. Part of it was because he had good money. And the thing is, this time he won by almost as much as he won by before, at a time when the Republican candidate for president was carrying the state of Missouri by substantially more than the Republican candidate for president carried it 4 years earlier. So that kind of says a little bit about his political strength. Very strong political guy. But he spent a lot of time on the road during his first term as governor. He was all over the place for various reasons. And so he has a lot of visibility, a lot of friends, pretty good fundraising abilities too. He's a powerhouse.
Yep. It'll be interesting to see where he goes with his administration the next 4 years, and then which office he decides to seek 4 years from now. Certainly looks like we've got some activity going on the stage right now, the makeshift stage that was built right in front of the Jefferson statue in front of the state capitol. Not all the seats are filled, but people are still looking like they're milling around a little bit. And it appears like we might be getting underway here actually very shortly.
Well, I see Senator Dempsey is at the podium, so that means that we're probably going to be starting very soon. He's a pretty soft-spoken guy.
Those of you holding seating tickets,
there we go.
Please take your seats at this time, as all unoccupied chairs will be released to anyone standing in just a few minutes. Repeat that. Those of you holding seating tickets, please take your seats at will be released to anyone standing in just a few minutes.
So I guess that's how we kick off the inauguration speeches from.
Basically, it's sit down, folks.
It is basically sit down.
Or you lose your seat. Use it or lose it.
They are trying to keep it on schedule as much as possible. We're looking, his speech, actually, he's going to convene the joint session of the General Assembly at 11:29. Are these times, generally speaking, historical in nature? They do it at this time every 4 years?
Yep. The National Guard has this all scripted out. All the times are down, and they just fill in the blanks every time. What happens is, after the inauguration, the National Guard will take a look at its schedule, involved with security people, the press, they'll ask us, and others about what they can do to improve things. And then they'll fill that in, and about 3 years from now, they'll dig out that book, and they'll look at the schedule, and they'll look at the things people thought could be improved, and they'll integrate that to the 2017 inauguration. But what we're looking at here as far as the schedule is the schedule that has been followed year after year, or inauguration after inauguration after inauguration. And they just fill in the blanks. Who's praying, who's singing, who's being sworn in, by whom, and then the governor gives his speech, and that's about it. So this is all pretty scripted. This is all pretty much known every 4 years. It's just a matter of filling in the blanks, then coordinating all of it. You know, this is a huge coordination thing because there's so many elements that are involved. Just making sure you have all the seats, making sure yesterday all the snow was blown away.
Right.
That's a big deal to make sure all of that happens.
Yeah, we talked to the Highway Patrol yesterday as they set up, they were setting up security for this event, and these platforms have been starting to be put into place a few days ago, about Thursday or Friday of last week. They started to be put into place. Everyone on the stage has taken their seat. Senator Dempsey.
That's an indication they're ready.
I believe that is an indication. Generally a good indication that looks like we may be getting underway here. Senator Tom Dempsey from St. Peter's is up at the microphone right now.
And he's got one of these little things in his ear like you have, an IFB. And he'll be hearing word from the National Guard telling him he's ahead of schedule, behind schedule, or something's going on. So he'll be taking.
And I think he's actually waiting for that moment right now.
Yep.
Because they do not want to be early, because they were early for Governor Nixon's first inauguration.
That's
correct?
Right. They were a few minutes early, and for Bob Holden, they were 15 minutes early for Bob Holden.
Right. We mentioned earlier that people joining, wanting to see the speech at noon, who happen to be watching, somewhere, saw the last half of his speech.
That's right. That's right. Now, normally the church bells from the church across the street.
All those standing may occupy the empty chairs.
And there are plenty of empty chairs.
There are plenty of empty chairs.
So anyone who decided to show up thinking they may get a seat, looks like they're going to be lucky enough to get one.
There are hundreds of chairs inside with television sets that people can watch. So probably there's a lot of folks who are inside right now who decided not to come out, even though it's turned into a pretty nice.
It really has. I mean, considering what it could be for this time of the year, this is not bad at all. Sun is out, not too much wind.
Nope, feels good.
Just a brisk January Missouri day.
That's right. That's right.
Now, how much will they wait to try and stay on schedule, or will they just Will they just decide, all right, let's go?
No, they'll usually pause. There will be some dead time if they start to get a little bit ahead. There'll be dead time certainly, but they try to fill it in with music. That's why they have the band here, and sometimes they'll just wait a couple of minutes.
There aren't too many new elected officials who are going to be sworn in today. So when do we start to get down into really the nitty-gritty of the political climate here in the Capitol after today?
We're probably a few days yet. The Senate has already appointed its committees, so we know who's on the Senate committees, and that means they can start hearing legislation, hearing bills, and taking testimony from the public and others about what the legislation should look like. So we're probably going to be seeing the Senate get started with that part of the process fairly soon. The House, I think, is a few days behind, and it's the way it sets up its schedule. So we'll see the actual sausage making begin within about a week to 10 days.
Okay.
And then the governor will present his budget on the 28th, and at that point the House Appropriations Committee will get right to work rewriting the budget in the way it wants to. And the thing about the budget this year, it's going to be very difficult, because when Congress passed the compromise budget bill about the first of the year, there were a lot of things they didn't talk about, including funding cuts, and that's going to have a big impact on the Missouri budget. I was talking to the budget director, Linda Lubring, a few days ago, and they don't know what those cuts are going to mean to state programs. They can't very well plan a state budget if they don't know what those budget cuts are going to do in terms of federal money that comes in, and a third of our state budget is federal funds. So because Congress delayed that part of its budget deal, the people who are going to be working on a House budget, and later a Senate budget, and the state budget office are kind of up in the air on a lot of these things.
Have you heard inside the Capitol what might be some of the first things that we see come up?
In terms of issues?
In terms of issues. I mean, the budget obviously takes, we're not going to see that until, April, May, that get concluded. Are we going to see any bills passed in a hurry? I mean, obviously there's been talk about some gun legislation on the national level. Not as much on the state level.
No, I don't think we're going to see much of gun legislation. The big thrust is jobs and economic development. So we'll see various kinds of tax bills or economic development bills, job bills. Those are going to probably get priority right out of the box. We'll see how quickly they get to the floor. The legislature can act very quickly when it wants to. Other times it operates getting everything in preparation to pass, and then they pass it the last week or 2 weeks. But otherwise, if they really want to get something done, they can do it in a matter of days. Normally the flow of legislation will advance everything through a long process. It'll be ready, everything will be ready to go by the 1st of May, and then the last week or two is when they really get down to actually passing the bills. It just takes a long time to reach a consensus when you have 197 people in the legislature, and each one of them has their own goals, their own belief system, the folks back home telling them what to do, and then you get all the folks in the hallways who are here to tell them what to do. Trying to find a consensus among 197 people on especially a major issue is very difficult. I don't know how it is at your house, and if my wife is watching this, it'll embarrass her, but sometimes we have difficulty deciding what we're going to have for dinner.
Right.
Well, if you have trouble deciding what you're going to have for dinner, can you imagine how hard it is to have 197 people and find a majority of 197 people who will agree on what's best for a Medicaid program, what's best for job programs, what's best for so many things. And they're dealing not with what's for dinner, they're dealing with life and death issues here. They're dealing with whether you can be born and how you will die sometimes, and everything in between. difficult.
You are watching the 2013 inauguration ceremonies here at the Capitol building, right here live on ABC 17. I'm Ryan Tate alongside of MissouriNet's Bob Priddy. Also, the people are watching on ABC17news.com as well as Missourinet.com. Bob, do you think that we may see, and since there's nobody at the podium, we can step into this. The 2012 was an election year, so I always got the impression that when legislation was going through, most of the politicians had an eye on, okay, well, this is an election year, this is an election year. This is not an election year in 2013. So will we see more or less accomplished?
I think we might see more accomplished this time around because the pressure's off. If you're the party who's not in power, you naturally want to make the party that's in power look kind of bad, or at least keep them from accomplishing things they can brag about. So that plays into it. I have found as I've watched governors come in, especially new governors, that if they have a bold initiative, they want to get that bold initiative done the first year they're in office. Certainly Mel Carnahan was that way with his big education reform bill. He got that passed in his first year. I'm not sure he could have gotten it passed in succeeding years when the politics started to become more into it.
The 97th General Assembly is hereby called to order. The legislative inaugural committees of the 97th General Assembly will escort Governor Jay Nixon and First Lady Georgianne Nixon to the stage.
Where is he?
Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Jay Nixon and First Lady Georgianne Nixon will now be seated. Will everyone please rise and face the national colors? After the posting of the colors, please remain standing. The 2012-2013 Missouri Teacher of the Year, Kathy Cartier of Afton High School, will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the national anthem sung by Lieutenant Colonel Regina Kilmer of the Missouri National Guard, and the invocation by Rabbi Amy Fader of Temple Israel in St. Louis.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Eternal One, a source of life, we ask for your blessings this day. We thank you and our forebears for having given us the opportunity to choose these leaders, our elected officials. And as they begin their term of office, we ask you, God, that upon them you grant wisdom, that they may always have the intelligence to make the right choices needed to lead this people. We ask that you offer them courage, that they may always know the difference between right and wrong and how to make those choices even when it is not easy to do so. We ask, God, that you bless them with forbearance and strength, that they may wake each day healthy, able to serve this people with everything they need to make the wise choices for this state and for our country. In the sayings of our fathers, Pirkei Avot, we are taught, Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor. It is not up to you to finish the work, but neither are you free to desist from it. We pray that our leaders will keep this in mind, that they will know that while perhaps they cannot finish the act of perfecting this world, they can work every day to make it a better place. And so too, as our leaders and guides, may we inspire them to work in our own way to make this world just a little bit better each and every day. In Jewish tradition, we have a blessing that we say at our most sacred occasions, known as the Shehechianu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. We bless you, God, who has given us life, who has sustained us, and who has enabled us to reach this season. And together we say, Amen.
Amen.
It is my pleasure to recognize some of our distinguished fellow Missourians seated on the platform this morning. Yes, please be seated. Will those who are being introduced please rise when you're introduced? I ask you to please hold your applause until I have recognized all of our special guests. Senator Claire McCaskill. The members of the Missouri Supreme Court: Chief Justice Richard B. Titleman, Judge Mary R. Russell, Judge Zell M. Fisher, Judge Laura Denver Stith, Judge George W. Draper III, Judge Paul C. Wilson, Rex Burleson, Judge of the 22nd Judicial Circuit Court, James F. Knatzer, Judge of the 16th Judicial Circuit Court, State Auditor Thomas A. Schweik, former Senator and former Governor Christopher S. Bond, former Governor Bob Holden, and former First Lady Lori Hauser Holden. Please be seated. Judge Mary R. Russell of the Missouri Supreme Court will administer the oath of office to the Attorney General of Missouri, the Honorable Christopher A. Koster.
I just got to go the other way, actually.
We're dancing.
All right, here we go.
Ready? Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Christopher A. Koster,
I, Christopher A. Koster,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the constitutions
that I will support the constitutions
of the United States
of the United States
and of the state of Missouri,
and of the state of Missouri,
and that I will faithfully demean myself
and that I will faithfully demean myself
in the office of Attorney General of the state of Missouri.
Attorney General of the state of Missouri.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yay, good job.
Thank you, Judge. Can we go right back there?
Judge Laura Denver Stith of the Missouri Supreme Court will administer the oath of office to the State Treasurer of Missouri, the Honorable Clint Zweifel.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Clint Zweifel,
I, Clint Zweifel,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
to support the Constitution of the United States
to support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the state of Missouri,
and the Constitution of the state of Missouri,
and to demean myself faithfully
and to demean myself faithfully
in the office of Treasurer
in the office of Treasurer
of the state of Missouri.
of the state of Missouri.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Judge James F. Knatzer of the 16th Judicial Circuit Court will administer the oath of office to the Secretary of State, the Honorable Jason Kander.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Jason Kander,
I, Jason Kander,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
to support the Constitution of the United States
to support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the state of Missouri,
and the Constitution of the state of Missouri,
and to demean myself faithfully
and to demean myself faithfully
in the office of Secretary of State of the state of Missouri.
in the office of Secretary of State of the state of Missouri.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Happy for you.
Judge Zell M. Fisher of the Missouri Supreme Court will administer the oath of office to the Lieutenant Governor of Missouri, the Honorable Peter D. Kinder.
Please raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Peter D. Kinder,
I, Peter D. Kinder,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the constitutions
that I will support the constitutions
of the United States of America
of the United States of America
and of the state of Missouri,
and of the state of Missouri,
and that I will faithfully demean myself
and that I will faithfully demean myself
in the office of Lieutenant Governor
in the office of Lieutenant Governor
of the state of Missouri.
of the state of Missouri.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce the 135th Army Band of the Missouri Army National Guard to perform the Battle Hymn of the Republic.
good shape.
demonstrates God has a sense of humor.
There's 12.
Is that 12? That's 12.
Judge Rex M. Burleson of the 22nd Judicial Circuit Court is now recognized to administer the oath of office of the 55th Governor of Missouri, the Honorable Jay Nixon.
Governor, would you please raise your right hand and repeat after me? I, Jeremy Wilson Nixon.
I, Jeremiah Wilson Nixon,
Do solemnly swear.
do solemnly swear
To support the Constitution of the United States.
to support the Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution of the State of Missouri.
and the Constitution of the State of Missouri,
And to demean myself faithfully.
and to demean myself faithfully
In the office of
in the office of
Governor for the State of Missouri.
Governor of the State of Missouri.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Rex.
It is now my honor to introduce the 55th Governor of the State of Missouri, the Honorable Jay Nixon.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge Burleson. Thank you, President Pro Tem Dempsey and Speaker Jones. Let me begin by thanking the people of Missouri for the privilege of serving a second term as your governor. I am grateful and humbled that once again you have given me the opportunity to lead our state forward. I will honor the trust and confidence you have placed in me each and every day. I'm joined today by Missouri's First Lady, my lovely wife, Georgianne. Our sons, Jeremiah and Will, and the rest of our family. I'd like to welcome Missouri's former governors, our statewide office holders, members of the Missouri Supreme Court, legislators, federal officials, and the people of the state of Missouri. When I first came to the Capitol as a freshman senator from my hometown of DeSoto, I was just 30 years old, the youngest person in the Senate. I had the good fortune to serve with many thoughtful, dedicated, and capable legislators from both sides of the aisle. Then, as now, Republicans and Democrats were deeply committed to their beliefs. Then, as now, we had a divided state government with a governor of one party and the other party holding a majority in the legislature. Disagreement and debate were daily fare. But it was possible to disagree while continuing to advance the public good. Cooperation was not considered a sign of weakness, but rather a prerequisite for progress. And progress is not partisan. We understood that first and foremost, we were all Missourians. So no matter which way the pendulum of power might swing, or which way the political winds might blow, our bedrock Missouri values of hard work, optimism, faith, and compassion never wavered. Those steadfast values have served the people of our state well for generations and will serve us well for generations to come. Now, some pundits like to say that politics in the show-me state has never been more partisan, more difficult than it is today. But as history tells us, that's simply not true. 150 years ago, Missouri was bitterly divided in the struggle for our nation's survival and its soul. For a time, Missouri had two state governments, two state capitals, and two governors. Two state flags fluttered above the boys in blue and gray. The sons of farmers and cobblers, tinkers and slaves. They fought and died on blood-soaked ground from the Boot Heel to the Iowa border. They rose with valor and fell with honor at Liberty and Lexington, Carthage and Wilson's Creek, Boonville and Fredericktown. Our newest state park commemorates the Battle of Island Mound, where the first African-American troops shed their blood for the Union in 1862. Centralia was the site of an infamous massacre when Confederate guerrillas bushwhacked more than 100 Union soldiers and hacked them to ribbons. Taking part in the killing spree were two young brothers from Clay County, 20-year-old Frank and 16-year-old Jesse James. 12 of Missouri's governors served in the military during the Civil War. That's right, 12. And for years after the war's official end, the suffering, retaliation, and political struggles dragged on, crippling our economy, testing our resolve. That, my friends, that was hard politics. But from that time forward, the arc of Missouri history shows us that even the deepest divisions can be healed. The people of Missouri are tough and resilient. And generation after generation, a bold vision for the future and a passion for progress spur us forward. We pushed back the wilderness, tilled the prairie, and opened the western frontier. We built railroads and highways, founded great universities and hospitals, tamed mighty rivers, even conquered space. In good times and bad, through hellish drought and high water, the people of Missouri have proved their mettle. And as we've seen these past few years, when our backs are against the wall, we come together. When the American auto industry was on the ropes in 2009, we pulled together and got it back on its feet. More vehicles made in Missouri means thousands of jobs for hardworking folks in every corner of our state. In a competitive and volatile global marketplace, we stepped up our game to set all-time records for exports in agriculture, biotech, and defense. Deals worth billions, creating prosperity here at home. When Mother Nature hit our neighbors with ice storms, floods, drought, and the most devastating tornado in our history, we rallied to their side. We were there at every step, from rescue to rebuilding. And the strength and resilience of Missourians inspired the world. History has left its indelible mark on our landscape and on our character. But history is not destiny. We do not inherit the future. We must build the future. A future without limits, where all our children get an education that prepares them to compete for the best jobs in the global economy. Where the brightest minds in science and technology advance the frontiers of human knowledge. Where business and the arts flourish. Where the bounty of Missouri's farms and fields will feed, clothe, and power the planet. And where the natural beauty of our state is preserved and cherished for all time. I am more optimistic than ever about our future. We will put our shared principles ahead of our small differences and work together for the common good. The people of Missouri deserve and expect no less. And that is how I intend to lead. Throughout my quarter century of public service, I've had the opportunity to visit with thousands of Missourians from all walks of life in every corner of our state. Year after year, I've met them in the halls of this historic capital, exercising their First Amendment rights. Midwives and math teachers, farmers and firefighters, Muslims and Mennonites, soldiers and scouts. They may not, and in fact do not, always agree. But they are a vivid reminder that democracy is a chorus of many voices. And our democracy and our state are stronger for it. On days like this one, I can look out the windows of my office and see the flags of our state and nation. Their colors bright against the winter sky. The wide Missouri in the distance. It's a beautiful sight. It is a reminder of the bold pioneers who walked this land before us, who explored the wilderness, who dedicated their lives to the creation of a more perfect union, who fought and died so that we might one day enjoy peace and prosperity. I think, too, of the bold pioneers who someday will explore new frontiers beyond our imagining. Today, I took a solemn oath to serve all the people of Missouri, to do everything in my power to make your lives better, and to make life better for our children and grandchildren. I pledge my oath to the waitress pulling double shifts just to feed and clothe her kids, praying that nobody gets hurt or sick because she can't afford a doctor's bill. I pledge my oath to the battle-weary veteran home from Afghanistan who deserves a job worthy of his skills and sacrifice. I pledge my oath to the farmer who plows and plants through flood and drought, year in and year out. Hardworking, God-fearing, decent folk. I carry them in my heart. Their strength gives me strength. Their courage gives me courage. And to live a life of service to the people of Missouri is my greatest honor. Our time here is fleeting, but the work we do will endure. Together we can and we will build a bright future for the great state of Missouri in the greatest nation on earth. May God Almighty guide us in our work. Thank Him and you, and God bless America and the state of Missouri.
Well done. Great job, guys. Well done.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 135th Army Band of the Missouri Army National Guard will perform America the Beautiful. Please continue standing for the benediction by Reverend Daniel Hilty of the First United Methodist Church in Jefferson City, and then remain standing after the benediction while the colors are retired and Governor and First Lady Nixon are escorted from the dais by the Inaugural Escort Committee.
Let us pray. O God, as our governor begins a new term of service, and our lieutenant governor and secretary of state and state treasurer and attorney general and other elected leaders, we pray that you would rekindle within them your gifts. Assure them of your spirit of love and power and wisdom and self-discipline. Send them out and all of us to serve you faithfully among the people of the state. Transform us all by the renewing of our minds so that we may discern what is your will, what is good and acceptable and right. Guide us and shape us, O God, that we may be a people who reflect your compassion, understanding, wisdom, justice, peace. We pray through your name. Amen.
This session of the 97th General Assembly is hereby adjourned.
You have been watching live coverage of the 2013 inauguration ceremonies as Governor Jay Nixon and First Lady Georgianne walked back alongside of Missouri-Net's Bob Priddy. And Bob, your thoughts on this inauguration?
Typical inauguration, general speech, looking forward, pleading for unity, setting forth an agenda that says we're going to work on things, we're going to accomplish things. Pretty much the way it always goes.
Yeah, he talked about the divisions in the state capitol right now. Obviously, the governor being a Democrat and the legislature being mostly Republican, but he's basically saying our divisions aren't even close to the worst divisions that we've ever seen in the state, bringing up stories about the Civil War. He also talked about some of his accomplishments. He was very brief about them. He talked about some of his accomplishments in the first term, and also a lot of the devastation that we saw, not only the droughts and some of the bad weather we saw with freezing and snow, but obviously the Joplin tornado.
Those are the things that he focused on a great deal, because those are the things that he worked hardest on in the most visibility part of his first term. There are things that show that we can overcome adversity. And he knows that we've overcome adversity 150 years ago, of course. We've overcome adversity during his first 4 years, and the state will be strong to overcome adversity no matter who's in power in the future. So he looked back, but he also was saying, in the future, even after I'm gone, we're the kind of people who can come together, who can accomplish great things when we do. That was a big theme of his inauguration. I thought the church bells kind of stole the show today.
The church bells stopped at about 8 or 9 of them, I think.
9 of them, I counted.
9, and then we had to wait a little bit, and then finally when Senate Pro Tem Tom Emsey got up there, they started ringing again.
Yeah, they had
until it got up to 12.
They had to fill that last few minutes before 12 o'clock to do it the right way, to have the church bells at noon and have the swearing in at noon.
And I believe the biggest laugh we did hear came from Governor Jay Nixon.
Yeah.
Very distinctive laugh, and you could hear him up on stage laughing about what happened. So from here on, we'll see what happens with now that we've got all of these office holders have taken their oath of office. We'll see where this goes in terms of legislation in 2013.
And the next big step will be the State of the State message on the 28th, where we get the outline from the governor of what his priorities are and what he hopes the legislature will enact. So that's 2 weeks from now, and then for the next 4 months or so, we'll see what the legislature does. There's an old saying here that the governor proposes, the legislature disposes. So the governor's going to be proposing in about 2 weeks, and then we're going to spend 4 months finding out what the legislature will dispose. And we'll find out by the middle of May what happens with all of this. By then, it'll be warm, the grass will be green, and there will be leaves back on the trees.
That's right. Thank you for joining us for this 2013 inauguration. For Missouri-Net's Bob Priddy, I'm ABC 17's Ryan Tay. Thanks again for joining us, not only on ABC 17, but also online at abc17news.com as well as Missourinet.com.
Did you know that 68% of drivers killed in Missouri